Hey everybody, this is Nathan Young. I'm back with Al Levy today. Thank you so much. I've been making a fool of myself on Instagram and LinkedIn recently, like making sure that I corrected myself, but then also like letting everyone awkwardly know that I biffed it a couple of times. Al, just for anyone who didn't catch the first round. So we're talking with you. You wrote the book, 7 Power Contractor. Give yourself like a quick reintroduction just to catch up anybody new or anything like that.
Yeah, so many moons ago, my family started out of a gas station in 1936. My father and uncle then took it out into the fuel oil business, which is what like propane is to the rest of the world. And then myself and my brothers arrived, my 2 older brothers, and we worked in the business. And honestly, we were making a lot of money, just crazy days and highly stressful to say the least. And I just looked up one day and said, I'm going to be a really rich dead guy. And that was not my desire. So we put a lot of systems in place. And then finally came a time where, these were working and humming and I'd done everything I pretty much wanted to do. I gave my dad, my brothers 3 years notice and off I went. And so I've been doing this for 18 years where I've been traveling the country and, actually Canada as well. I've got a big following in Australia, go figure, power of the internet. And so really it's all about, getting good people and putting them in great systems and seeing how far they can go.
Awesome. I recently reread the book 7 Power Contractor, which you wrote, and I took a bunch out of that. I talk about traction in the EOS system really constantly in everything I do. And basically, as I was listening to that, and I just said this to you, was you effectively wrote traction, but specifically for the contracting industry.
I would say, having never read it, that's quite true, but I am really all about copyright protection. I want to tell you without any problem or concern, I never even heard of Gino Wickman till about a year or two ago. And people that I work with and people I respect told me, man, you got to read Gino Wickman's Rocket Fuel, because they were trying to explain to me about this integrator and implementer. And I never even knew about it except because I was both. I never even thought that there wasn't both. But it explained a lot, because why was people that I was bringing these systems to wildly great success and some other people struggled. And, so that's really kind of a thing that really opened my eyes. So now I have a homework assignment.
Yeah.
And I have to go read traction. So, okay.
Right. Awesome. Well, so from that, last time we dug in on a couple of the powers. This time, I want to go question by question. So I asked a couple people what questions they had. I basically rounded up like the insights that I felt like I took that I was the most curious about and what other people were asking me. And so I have a list here. This will be more like an FAQ maybe. Instead of a general overview on some of the powers, I want to dig in to some of the things that reading through the book and people I asked, like, this is the stuff that popped out to us. So I'm just going to go one by one and then take it away after that. But my first question is, you say and I'm going to jump all over the book as far as like what powers and stuff like that, because that's how the book.
As long as you don't ask me on page 63. Do you remember when you wrote this? Because I do get that in seminar webinars, and it's like, no, I don't remember by page number.
Right. Page 63, paragraph 2 in the audiobook. Do you remember what that says?
Yes. I was drinking in a bar when I remember I wrote that.
Right. Well, so you say in financial power, pricing driven by your budget, not the market. And that is perhaps not intuitive. So can you just flat out repeat that idea and like how to charge per hour, or why not to, and how you should be breaking that down?
Yeah, no, I stand on the shoulders of great people in our industry. It was Frank Blau and George Brazil, where the contractors realized that, we were pricing jobs all wrong because the person we were copying as competition were going broke. So why are we going down that same road? And about delivering higher levels of service and stuff. And so they were the first ones to really introduce this concept way back in the 90s about, you got to do a budget. You got to know what it's cost to be in business. You got to know what you need to do, because customers don't want to pay for that stuff, but they want that stuff. They want you to answer your phone 24/7, 365. They want somebody who's educated, in his truck, fully stocked with all the equipment and the know-how how to do that. And so in the high technology today, which basically we're technology companies as contractors, it's just what we've become. And you couldn't run your company. And the great news is, thank heaven we were, because COVID hit and you would have been out of business if you didn't have this capability. So what this really is about is that, and it's the great Ellen Rohr, who's a disciple of Frank Blau, who really, a very close friend of mine, but really we're co-consultants. I'm not sure if I mentioned this the last time. We've been the best of friends. We've worked on jobs together, and we decided a long time ago we love each other, but we're never going to get married. So we always work together and date. And so she really handles the financial. But here's the thing about this whole idea was, a simple budgeting. She's got some great budgeting too. That's Ellen Rohr, R-O-H-R. And so it really just makes it, she has, I think we had mentioned too the last time, was she has two of the books that I feel are the most profound business books that you need to read when it comes to what Nathan's talking about here about financial, which is Where Did the Money Go? And the second book is How Much Should I Charge? Because that was always the question we had. I was working with the great Tommy Mello yesterday. We were doing a podcast for Service Titan, and he goes, I was making $22 million a year. And I'm asking myself, where did the money go? Because he worked with Ellen as well. And he said, worse than that, I get this huge tax bill and there's no money. He said, so, this is the kind of thing. So when I always talk about top line and gross profit, not one or the other. And you can't get there without doing budgeting. So I recognize there's pressures as far as your other companies, but they cannot be the determining factor about what you need to charge to take your company from what I call a commodity to a niche. And of course, you have to be great at sales and marketing, the 7 powers. Who knew? As far as to be able to differentiate yourself and to be worth the money. Because like I used to share, years ago, all right, ancient history, I used to buy a motor for $30, paid a service tech $20, $50, charge $100. Man, I am going to make a bunch of money. And the answer, of course, was no, I'm not going to make a bunch of money because I didn't count all the costs other than that tech. The lights, the heating, the phone call, the 24 service answers, all of the things. It's just there's so many things. That's really what your chart of accounts on your budgeting thing is listing all of what it costs to be in business. And then again, figuring whatever you're going to do next, but ultimately, where's the money? And that's in the gross profit. So, and then you have to figure out how many billable hours you have to sell in a day. I know you think you sell stuff, but you don't. What you really sell is your time, which is billable hours. That's really what it comes down to. So I always, at the end, there's this wall here. If I only had 2 minutes to sit with you, Nathan, as a contractor, I would take on your 8-foot wall a big fat paint roller and just write billable hours and walk out because it's that important.
Well, okay. So you the boil down is billable hours.
Yes.
It
comes from the budget.
Yes. As part of the budget. And you give in the book, you give a basically a math formula for coming to this number as an example. So Mike, I might put you on the spot here. Do you recall the exact formula of breaking that down, and can you repeat it to us?
Yeah, is it on page 63 in paragraph 2?
Yeah, that's the audiobook.
Yeah, so really what it is, what I said is it is not a replacement for doing full out budgeting. So don't take this as, I did what Al said, I'm done. But really what I try to help guys who charge $100 an hour maybe, they think that's a lot, or $50 an hour, and they mark up the parts and they think, well, it's going to be a lot of money. And most times they find that's not the case. I mean, far and away, that's not the case. So what I say is, okay, get your accountant to give you the chart of accounts, which is everything you spent last year. So it's what I call a 3-column budget. So the first column is all of your chart of account. what did it take to be in business 2020? Now, 2020 is a weird year. So let's use 2019. 2019, you've been in business a while. Now you know all of the expenses, all the things that you have not taken into account. How about insurance? How about taxes? How about everything? So all of it's there. And then you look at every expense and go, oh, cost of fuel for the trucks. Is that going to go up? If it is, I've got to mark it up. So I'm adjusting my first column. The second column is you go, you know what? I've been listening to this guy, Levi, and the thing about operating manuals is really smart. How can I run my company without manuals that talk about the policies, procedures, without the org chart that he talks about, all of those things? I'm going to invest the money with Al. So now in that middle column, everything you're going to do now that's going to make you better for the coming year, whether it's next year, 3 years, 5 years. I don't really go out much more than 5 years because then I think it's just like a wish or a fairy tale. Yeah. So that's really what I kind of pay attention to is what are you going to do that's going to move ahead? Maybe let's say there's a great course out there that you need to attend. Maybe there's a great tool that if you had this tool, you could differentiate yourself from every other person. Like, so when I was in Zoom, we had trucks like unlike anyone else that we could clear drains in a way that no one else could. And we could serve residential, commercial, industrial customers, which a guy in a white truck with a snake is no way could do this. So we already differentiated ourselves. And that means we're worth more money, which we made a ton of money. The last column, if you add these two up, it just brings you out to what it costs to be in business. So the last column is gross profit. I'm really not interested in anybody's net profit or any of these other things. And everybody goes, well, net profit's important. I go, not really, unless you're going to sell your company or you have to show the net profit for the banks who want to, because you need a loan or invest. Otherwise, gross profit is the biggest thing, because if it's not, again, on the top line and gross profit, the two things that I care about, it's not going to be any further down your balance sheet, profit and loss, whatever you want to call it, all the other gobbledygook that goes into it. And so you come up with this number of $1.2 million, 1.2 million. And then you decide, well, I got 6 guys that go working. 6 guys into 1.2 means that every truck rolling has to bring me a minimum of $200,000 at the gross profit I want. So that's just a really quick sit down with a piece of paper kind of thing. And that will get you really, if I could just tug your blinders off and get you out of this idea. Now, it's not to say you can't make money at time and material. You can, but it's very, very difficult. I mean, really difficult to do. And you have to really, being sure that you're really charging enough and adding a lot more into the process.
Well, I think that's a fantastic answer. I'm going to make an attempt to have that play into something else, because as you broke that budget down, you talked about what it cost, to run your company, the things that you want to invest in, maybe say like truck wraps or,
yes.
And then like
online advertising.
Right. So my next question is, I had someone ask me recently, we were talking about the book and we were talking about the budgeting breakdown, and they asked me, well, okay, so, and this is another question that I'll reference later, but percentage wise, a company should be spending how much on marketing? And I said, well, it depends, was my first answer. It depends.
Are you a consultant? Because consultants, we all learned to go, depends.
Right. Yeah, it depends. Because I said, it depends on what you want to achieve.
Yes.
There is no such thing as a set amount. There are some numbers that set a good starting line. And actually in the book, you mention numbers between 4 and 20%, which makes perfect sense to me, because I'm like, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So 1, help me understand how you come up with some of those numbers, unpack that a little bit. And 2, I want to tie that back into this, like, okay, it's 1.2 million. You've got this multi-column breakdown. Also, what if you want to grow to 2 million?
Yes. That's, Ellen used to call it the stretch budget or grow. So you have an actual living budget, which is just, pardon the expression, a wild ass guess.
Yeah.
I should have said anatomical. Right? Yeah. And so it's only as good as you plugging your numbers in. That's the nature of a budget. It just gets you into the ballpark. It doesn't get to your seat. That's when we're able to go back to a ball game full out. But anyway, so the point of it is that's really what makes a difference here. As to the 4 and 10%, that's based on my own experience, including the people that I was friendly with and worked with that I didn't compete with. But also when I did all this work for 18 years is 4% of your marketing, of your total sales. So if, let's make the math easy, is if it's $1 million, 4% is 40 grand, which the other big thing to that is you really need to decide what is marketing and what is not. Because once you do, you're locked in. So is truck wraps a marketing expense? Well, if they're on a big truck and they're on rolling billboards and they're in the service area, the answer is yes. Now you could say, well, wait a second, it's on the truck, so it's really a truck expense. And I'm not going to argue with you all day long, but the fact is you just got to decide, how about if I put you in good looking uniforms? Is that a uniform expense or marketing expense? So there are some things. Look, obviously online advertising is clearly a marketing expense. Radio, clearly a marketing expense. Billboards, radio, bus stops, taking over a bus. These are all easy ones, but there's a lot of them that become gray. So once you decide, you lock in. But a good rule of thumb is 4% is what you need as a minimum. If you're a really good company, established and known, people will get sick, die, quit, move, and you have to replace all that. Until you get to about 10%, so again, easy numbers, $1 million in sales, that means you have 100,000 is going to marketing. That's already telling you about where you need to charge money, but 100,000 is in that gas tank, what I like to think of. So that's why I always talk about the number one thing when I put a marketing plan together is the marketing budget, which is the percentage of sales. And the reason, again, we stress this percentage of sales is when you get to Tommy's company, you're 22 million, 10% means 2.2 million in advertising. That's a lot of money and it will drive you crazy. So you say, well, we could probably cut costs. And all of a sudden the ads start to lose and you're going, where did the calls go? And how do I keep all these trucks busy? And that's kind of the whole idea about marketing, is working a little bit backwards. So if I have 10 guys out there and they need a 4 great calls opportunity, that's 40 calls a day times 7, 208, see how the math is starting to work. And then if I want to be expanding, this is a weird thing because we as contractors don't want to disappoint people. Reality is though, you need way more calls from the right customer at the right time than you can humanly do in a day, because it forces you to charge more. It helps you get more particular about who you're going to for the money, and ultimately allows you to add more apprentices who ultimately become your techs.
Yes. I mean, I totally jive with everything that you just said. I also can really appreciate, I want to actually go just a little bit deeper on one specific thing you just mentioned there, which was that you said 4% is like the butt end, so to speak. And you also offered this, which was, look, truck wrap, business card or refrigerator magnet or whatever, which still effective, by the way, as a digital marketing guy, if you leave something, the nice shirt, the nice hat with the logo on it, those are marketing expenses. If you want to put them in the truck expense or the employee expense or whatever, like that's fine. But you don't really need to, because you could get a plain truck and you could have a guy wear the t-shirt they have.
Yes, which is very dangerous, by the way, because the t-shirt they have usually says, I hate my boss's guts. It's not really good when they're in front of the customer.
Exactly. It's awesome that everybody likes Black Sabbath, including me.
Yes. Yeah, who doesn't?
Right. But as that being the only thing that all of our customers know about Fred, who is in your house fixing your thing, feels a little weird.
Yes, a little weird. And again, so I personally put it in when I work with guys. I tell them it's a marketing expense. They're walking billboards. I mean, everybody. And I also believe, by the way, the inside people, they also come to work. Where it's like, if you've ever been to a NASCAR race, you can't tell who's in the crowd and who's with the pit because they're all dressed the same. And so they go to 7-Eleven, Circle K, wherever they go, and they are dressed sharp. It is a walking billboard for you. It is such a great investment. And it also brings team cohesion together.
Yes, 100%. Well, so from there, I think we dove into that enough, but I effectively wanted to just solidify that, like, that 4%, you're saying this isn't even going to, quote, move you forward. This is
No.
to help you maintain the fact that, just like you said, people get sick, people leave, stuff happens. You need 4% into uniforms, truck wraps, basic advertising just to stay in business.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you'll know that. I mean, I think you'll smile when I say this, but I've had lots of guys who take, I would say, almost a strange level of pride in going, I don't spend anything on marketing. And of course they're wearing a company t-shirt and hat. And I'm like,
Yes.
really? You do? Okay, sure.
I know. And the truck is just, they just spent a ton of money on the truck wrap. And so this
Right.
goes again about, what do you think? Now it's true. Look, if you're great at referral marketing, and we were, it's a great way to get inexpensive, and it should be one of your arsenals, depending
Yes.
on where you're working. And we were really great at acquisition, which has a really low cost if you know how to do it right. And I'm going to say again, if you know how to do it, it's a lot like buying homes. You have to be able to know how to do it right. And it's a method to get rich or go really broke if you don't know what you're doing. So of course, you have to have documented systems, and there's good to have a trail guide like myself who's been down this path a ton of times. But even with the customers that I work with, and we're really great at acquisition, they are not silly enough to think that's the only way to go to market. Not even close. They just use it as one of their tools as they're going. It's kind of like, if you were on the old days with a Viking ship, it's really good idea to put all the oars in the water if you're trying to get across the Atlantic. That's what I recommend.
That's going to be a clip that we post on Instagram later.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the book, and we just sort of said this, marketing and hiring are tied together.
Yes.
And that, and I want to take this a little bit towards the hiring side. You basically have said, I have two reasons for doing this. The first one is, I've been saying this for a long time, and people are like, hey, you're a search marketer, you're a web designer, that's what you guys do. Like, what do you know about hiring? And I'm like, I know that we can help. I'm not going to interview anyone for you, but I know that what we do can help. And this is how, because two reasons. The first one is, that's where your eventual employees are double checking you. And the second one is, it's both marketing, like you are trying to attract people, and what people want is to know what the benefits are to them. So I read this part in the book, and you basically say you need to make sure your hiring ads are targeted towards the benefits of the people applying. And I was like, okay, he and I are on the same track. So from there, I wanted to ask you, are you seeing any particular benefits or bonuses working especially well to attract great talent recently?
So first thing I'm going to say is, get out of my head, Nathan, because that's exactly what I was thinking. And so just before we move on, recruiting and marketing are two sides of the same coin. If I'm really a great marketer, I know what makes my ideal customer tick. I understand that person. I may even have a name for them, like Best Buy did years ago. And I know what motivates you, and if I can sell to you so well, I can sell to 10, 100, a million of you. Well, that skill is exactly the same thing when it comes to recruiting. First of all, you have to have a marketing budget, because I can't afford myself to be the recruiter of choice out there and make a difference. Part of the problem is with ads were awful, including, by the way, not so smart, Al. We had awful ads because we usually did it in desperation when we needed somebody. And really, all we ever wanted to talk about was what we want, what we want, what we want. We couldn't care less what you wanted. And so it wasn't until I went through a lot of help on this stuff was that I realized it's just like marketing. And so you've got a million choices out there. I mean, really, if you're breathing today and you're not employed, well, okay, especially in contractor land, because we're crazy busy. It really comes down to, how are you going to stand out as the employer of choice? So my goal years ago, when I turned it myself and used my marketing skills, is we offer careers, not a job, which automatically took me out of everything because everybody wanted pre-made people. And the problem with that is I understand why you want that because it seems easier to have them pre-skilled and I don't have to do any work. But then that pool gets really small. And by the way, you don't get the pieces you want. You get the whole thing. So they don't like to come to work early. They don't like to not drink in the morning. There's a lot. A driver's license is optional because it's been suspended 15 times. So these are the problems when you don't spend money in recruiting. Now, the other thing is, of course, if you're like myself and we began to build people from scratch. And what I mean by that is that we took young, willing people, provided the skills at every position, not just tech, every position on our org chart, every box on that org chart, we were doing that way. And it really does change the dynamic because then we had willing people that had skills and were trained our way. And when you can do that, that really makes a difference, but it takes money to do that. And this is what I was sharing with Tommy and I the other day is what else are you doing with your money other than wasting it? And the other fact that's changed is, years ago when I would be doing hiring, I'd be talking, trying to get you to come. After a while, I learned to ask a good question, shut up and let them talk. Because my selling was so obvious. I wanted them to sell them on myself. And sometimes what I just wanted to hear way back when is, what have you done to look into us before you come through the door? Well, nowadays, any decent young employee has already been on Glassdoor. They already know your reputation with your employees. And if it's bad, my friends, you better go fix it in a hurry. So that's kind of the nature of it. And by the way, who should be your poster? Well, in the case of business, a good friend of mine told me years ago, he said, I kind of listen to what you say, but what I really want to hear is somebody who looks like me. So what he was trying to tell me is that if I'm selling to residential customers, whatever I'm trying to sell, they have to be saying how much the product really made their life better, or the service was really good, or how much they love that, we answer our phones live ourselves. Guys are in trucks, can go get them done. They have everything they need. If there's a problem, they're coming back, they're fixing it. That's really counts. Same thing for commercial, industrial, depending on which market segment you're going. Well, the same thing in recruiting, which is you could be the face of the company, which is good. But I really want to know what Nathan, who works at your company, said is, hey, you know what? I arrived at this company, a young person, they trained me all. Every one of the companies I work with, they have videos from these people. We talked about it. They worked in a mailroom and they came with no skills. And today they're a service manager. And that is not a one-off story, by the way.
No, that's awesome. I want to, this is like a little down further into the hiring training thing and actually the development of people. So you mentioned in the book, or you actually have a name for these people. You call them knowledge pigs. And it's going to sound like I'm in your head because I literally was in your head for like,
well, knowledge pig was referring to me first, and every one of you other contractors out there listening today, you're all knowledge pigs. I know you.
So, but recently I was talking to Chad German, and I think he actually just transferred to a full-time position teaching new electricians, helping people get their licenses. And he's like the Utah electrician guy on Instagram. A fantastic leader in the trade services and especially in the electrical industry. And he was basically just like crying out, like, we're missing leadership and continued education. But one thing that he actually had to say about this idea, and so I wanted to say this and see what your reaction is. You call out knowledge pigs as like again, I'll use that term, but you kind of call out this idea that like you succumb to fear and think that it's your job to know everything. And maybe if they learn all the stuff that makes you useless. I kind of mentioned that idea to Chad, and he was like, no. There's a step even further than that. You're lacking the leadership, so you're not training the people. So not only are you holding on to knowledge they need, so they don't have the career, but the second thing is your tendency is to hold on to knowledge. And that means you're not gaining continued education yourself, probably. They're actually going to pass you up. They're going to go right around you, whether that's in your company or leaving your company to find it somewhere else. So being this like holder of knowledge, this keeper, is actually going to lock you in place, and people are going to pass you right up. What's your response to this idea?
Yeah, so Knowledge Pig was really about the highest levels of training myself and my brother Richie would go to for the biggest jobs, and because we didn't want to spend the money and invest and take guys, and we also felt, well, if we give them all this information, what's going to, the classic stupidity is, what if I train them and they leave? And then of course the answer is, what if you don't train them and they stay? And so we had crews on at night. By the way, I'm talking about, we actually had crews on, not this thing about on call, wake me up out of bed. There were people on through rotating shifts. And so they would get to these big jobs and they couldn't do it. So what did they have to do? He either had to call Al or call Richie. And we hated them for waking us up because we finally got to sleep. When we finally got tired of blaming them, and this is now when we're in the manual passes, we said, well, me and Richie said, how do they get to this job and know anything if we're not going to share it? So they had to go to training with us. But we wrote some manuals that said, before you call Al and Richie, check that there's fuel, there's air, there's spark. 50% of our calls went away when I decided to give up the Knowledge Pig. And what I shared with my company, I had a lot of guys when I was trying to put the manuals way back together and the rest of it. And I would ask them, and one of the words you had used, I would ask about something and they'd go, well, it depends. And then they'd ask another thing about a procedure and they go, well, it depends. And finally I put down my pen and I go, the way I'm seeing it is you don't want to give me the information because you think that's what makes you valuable. Well, here's the thing you don't know. If you go across the street and the bus hits you, I'm out of luck. So if that's how you're going to hold me hostage, you might as well go now. I'll figure it out. Or you can stay here, help me get this knowledge out, because the real value you have is in how you empower others to be successful. Because if you can do that, I've got a great career for you. And I will say overall, and with people that I've coached, it's really made a monstrous difference. As to sharing the knowledge and wanting to be the go-to person, I've shared the story before, which is, I'm in my truck, lucky enough to have the best heating guy in the world, who's an author and writer at this point, going out on jobs, which was so rare. And so, everything is going off, my phone and everything, and they're all looking for me. And my friend looks at me and just goes, you think that's normal, don't you? And I stopped and thought to myself, yeah, and I hate everybody for doing that. And then I stopped for a second and I just thought to myself, wow, I'm indispensable. Look at me. And so that's really the trap. And that's where owners get hung up. And so, yeah, as far as the training and the rest of it, also, one of the things we did, though, I will share is, we used to go to these classes and pirate people from others. So if you were out there, be aware. And we recognize you guys are trying to do the same thing. So whenever we sent them out to training, myself, my brother Richie, or a service manager or field supervisor would go with them, not so much to keep them, you're not a slave or servant to us. But the reality is that when they would go to class and they would see us all there, they'd look around and go, wow, there's nobody else doing this. And they just were so attached. We were really great. When I always talk about staffing power is 5 steps: always be recruiting, always hiring, always orienting, always training. And the one we all miss, always retaining. We figure they're on the team until they're not. And so training and constant training, which was, if you're at our company, you are always in training, never ending. You're always in good meetings, not miserable donut meetings where we talk about nothing over and over again. Especially when we have manuals, we're talking about 1 to 2 pages about how to get better all the time, every week.
Well, and it sounds like you're saying this too, which is, so correct me if I'm wrong. What Chad basically said was this dearth of leadership, this lack of leadership often comes from the person feeling like if they stick with you, they're stuck, as opposed to if they stick with you, they're going to keep growing. And so I wonder, because what you're saying is you would show up at the training, you'd show up in force. And I wonder how you would feel about this statement, which is, it is more likely to me in my head that you retained people better because they got to look around and go, these guys that are about to ask me to come work for them, none of them brought their teams. But if I stick with this company, I get to show up every time. No, this is where I am.
Yeah, no, my guys were always being pirated by other companies, especially like, now, of course, it's crazy because of, everybody buying homes and shortage of materials. I mean, if you're a contractor, you don't have jobs and crazy busy, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so the reality is this is just another part of the cycle, one of the benefits of living a long life. And I've been here before. And when the dot-com thing happened, people were calling up my guys at home all the time about, oh, we'll give you some extra money, whatever. I didn't lose anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
zero. And the reason is that I knew what the reason was, is they knew their career path up the org chart. They knew that I was going to take them every step. They could even go off and run a branch because we did hub and spoke as well. And they also looked around and go, well, if this guy's not going to invest anything in my training, this is where I'll be stuck. And, so they didn't go. I didn't lose anybody. It really was, again, one of the most powerful, and I wish I could say, oh, I knew that was going to happen. I did not. What we found out is the better we trained them, the never-ending training, they were excited about that. Again, remember, we built them from apprentices to junior techs to senior techs to field supervisors to big ticket system advisors to service manager to install manager to, again, going off and running their own shop with all of our rules and systems and everything else. So we had a great path with that.
From there, asking a little bit, you talk a lot in the book, and I totally understand this, about sales training and how sales training is actually, like, you can call it sales training. It's really customer service training. And so I wanted to ask a very specific thing along the sales training. That's really like a sort of a technical. You mention about a brag book in the book, and I have to wonder, how relevant is the brag book now? Do you still recommend bringing a binder, or is like carrying a phone or tablet with like your Instagram or
Facebook
profile?
It's just got a name and stuck. Today, nobody's bringing in a book, although there are some physical moments, like, where we have really good looking folders, because when you leave and nobody's left anything, that an email is not very powerful when you're asking me for 10 grand. And so there's still some times where we'll either print or sort some things out or leave some brochures or what they used to call cut sheets about all the different things we could do. So there's a mix of both, but brag book is really, may I show you some things? And they just flip like this through an iPad. I'm moving my hand for those who can't see me. And so swiping, I have to be careful, swiping right and swiping left, but you follow what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're right. Rolling them through. But the idea about the brag book is, and just to be clear about the terms here, evidence manual is for a tech that says why what I'm doing is something you should go forward. It's got testimonials from customers who've done similar work. It's got your license and pedigree and company insurance and all the reasons. It's kind of pulling the curtain back to see why, hey, I called you today, XYZ, whatever you are, and why this is the best choice I should make. So that's the evidence manual. And the brag book is for the big ticket salesperson, person I call the system advisor. And they get to talk about how great the company is, same as the brag book, evidence manual. But then it's also my individual license. I had a ton of licenses. I was authorized by a lot of manufacturers because we had gone to all this training. And once we were in their class, they knew by far we were the best trained people out there, and they wanted us to be their reps. And so, it's pretty easy to sell a Teledyne to somebody there when you can go, hey, by the way, it's not my word, here's my Teledyne thing,
Right. Out of curiosity, you mentioned this, and I've heard this multiple times, which is not just from you, but like from other people that I've talked to, like home service and trade stuff is explosive right now. I mean, like you said a minute ago, like if you're not busy, like what's going on? And you might be that you're stuck behind hiring, right? Like, but from there, here would be a question that I'd have. If you're in a company, so now I'm going to lower the target of who I'm talking to for just a second from the owner, and I'm going to go across for a second to like maybe a division leader, someone who's growing in their career and is hearing us talk about like what leadership looks like and going, shit, like if that's what leadership looks like and that's what leadership might look like, maybe this weird feeling in my gut that I've had is not such a weird feeling. And maybe I either need to, maybe I'm willing to invest for a second where I'm at before I go look, right? Because maybe I really like Greg, and maybe Greg just doesn't realize this yet. So here's a question that I would have is, if a division leader, someone who is like, I'm willing to be a leader, I'm willing to stake out my claim with Greg here in this company, and I want to grow us. If that guy wants to put together one of these books, whether that's a physical binder or a tablet set of documents, or even just put it directly on a website, whether that page is listed for everyone or not, so that he can just use that. What exactly do you have, like a recipe that someone can go find? Is that on your website? Is that in the book somewhere that they can know
Yeah.
exactly what they need to build?
No, there is what I usually start with is 10 reasons to choose you, whatever the roofing, your roofing business, kitchen cabinetry, plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, garage doors. So 10 reasons to choose. And it's just really kind of simple, just putting an issue of doubt. Usually it's on the website, because the 10 questions you put there, 10 ways to choose the right thing, or the information is really going, is really to unlock their mind that, oh, there's actually some difference between you. Because when I get there, I'm going to knock down every one of those 10 dominoes. You with me? So as to the brag book and the evidence manual, you don't get to have that much input, because I'm a systems guy. So in the evidence manual, it's pretty much set as for a tech as to what they have to use. When you become a system advisor, it does have some flexibility, because you may have been certified, licensed, all the other, your pedigree is even greater than Al's pedigree. And so if we both come to the job, we have a lot of stuff that's similar, and then a few things that are going to be different, because my pedigree is different than your pedigree. And so that's where the difference is between those two. As to the career, if they don't know how they make money, and Ellen Rohr, again, the great Ellen Rohr, and I put together a reward program, and we said, if you can't go home and speak to your significant other in 15 minutes, they know how you make money, there's something broken in your system. And so that's kind of, yeah. So the rewards, how you get paid, how you get for going above, what is your next step is, I was saying the other day is that I used to hate this 5 o'clock knock, somebody coming to my door. I knew why they were there. I need to raise the rest of stuff. And I hated them. But what I realized ultimately pretty quick is, based on the org chart, if I didn't put, how do you move from one box to another, is, oh, pretty boxes. What does that have to do with me? And then a case of, so people would leave. And I realized that, again, because one day I was driving a truck going off to no heating call. I was in my early 30s. And I thought to myself, if I wasn't me, what would I be thinking? And instantly I knew, oh, I'll just buy a white truck. I'll charge $5 less than you, Mr. Owner. I'm going to make a ton of money. And unfortunately, 9 out of 10 of them are going to go really broke, because they don't know all the things we talked about earlier about what are the costs. The fact that you're a great tech doesn't mean anything. And now it's helpful, don't get me wrong, but it's not the whole thing. You don't know the financial service. There's a lot of things that go into the business. There are 7 powers you have to master.
Along that, I'm going to stay on the marketing and sales side for just a second. Again, something that you brought up, but again, getting back towards that ownership spot. In the marketing playbook, you have a testimonial from a person. In the marketing power within the book, you have a testimonial that actually reads like the target list from this book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And in this book, he espouses this concept of the target list. And in the testimonial, that company chose 25 other companies where they basically got all their work, or could, because they were often sort of like a downstream company, if I can use that word, where somebody else would get the primary job and then they would refer them, right? And so they basically said, we picked those 25 upstream companies, and then we just relentlessly pursued them till we got a yes or no. And we ended up getting yeses, right, across the board. It might have taken a couple of years for some, but we got yeses. Do you think this still works?
Oh, absolutely. Referral marketing is what I think you're speaking to. Zoom is, which was a franchise that I was involved with, that's really the whole core. And, it's one of the most effective ways, but it's not different than my dad. and my uncle, when they built the business and really started to boom it, they were always working with houses of worship, local communities, because they had their customers. They worked with real estate agents. They worked with whoever they needed to do to get to the audience they were trying to get to. And so that really was another oar in the water of how you make sure that, you're really out there. Yeah, the answer is referral marketing still works. Now, depending on what you're trying to go for, I would say it works particularly well, and it's not even like optional. If you're a commercial, you serve commercial, you really need somebody out there who's going to, cool their heels in an office and, talk to the person in front to get to see the big boss who has 15 buildings or is the regional manager of Starbucks in the area that you are. You have to build those relationships and keep them open. Now, in my commercial, sales advisor, system advisor, actually it's commercial sales at CSA. Basically, they're not like the brightest people knowing everything. They just know how to ask a couple of good questions. Their job is to look good, to ask some quick questions, know how to get the customer, potential customer talking about what they don't like, what they would like, and getting them to just agree to use us and prove that we got it. And then they have testimonials in their brag book that talk about, hey, there's a restaurant chain that loves us just like you. And they show them the picture and the video or anything else of that nature.
Awesome. I have two last questions to ask you. One for me and then one about you. This one is, you brought up ServiceTitan just a minute ago. We've been researching customer relationship management or like job scheduling, software type stuff. So part A, do you recommend as a home service company using those types of software?
Yeah, it used to be years ago, there were a bunch of really good software, and they're still probably out there. Years ago, Successware, Ergos, and I'm talking about 90s, early 2000. But frankly, they've been blown by ServiceTitan, and I'm not a paid spokesman for them. But all of my best contractors, what's surprisingly is if you're like 5 trucks, it's not inexpensive by any means. It's just super powerful. It allows you to do things that, years ago I could just dream of, which is to listen to every call, know where every call is coming from. There's just so much stuff built into it. And they're always growing and investing in their stuff. And so, yeah, Tommy Mello uses it. Keith Pinkerton uses it. Zoom uses it. And it's really been a foundational piece. I will say this about computer software, because I was actually in that business for a little bit as well, as I was already a contractor too. The reality is any software is only good as you know it. It's only, and also resisting the temptation is, well, why can't you put it in the left column? Because I don't want to look in the right column. Well, they designed it that way, not just for you. They have to support it. So when you make them move stuff all over, or you don't want to learn how they have it, you're already putting yourself behind the 8 ball as to doing it. So yeah, and part of it is to think of it as an investment. I know that's like a cliche thing here. It's not an expense, it's an investment. If we're talking about maximizing your billable hours, things of that nature, I have not seen another software for contractors. Now, they're not necessarily the best right yet on commercial contractors, although they're getting better and they're closing that gap. They're really geared to the residential home service market at this point, and they're really good. I would say that's one that I would talk about is certainly at the forefront of it.
Okay. Well, I mean, my first question was going to be, do you recommend using those types of softwares? And then my second question was going to be, do you have one that you recommend? I think you covered both gaps in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
yes.
I don't know how you can operate without really good software. I will say one of the traps is, though, and this was the great Frank Blau I mentioned earlier. He says, Al, if you can't figure out your business on a piece of paper, all the computer will do is just make it more difficult to figure it out. Yep. So don't think that, oh, I'm going to buy this software and magically I'm going to fix whatever software it is. I'm a big believer in the CRM, customer relationship management database. And so there's a lot of pieces that are built in. It's not the only thing that you have, but it works well with a bunch of different pieces.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a magic bullet that's going to solve your problems if you can't, like what you just said, or like what Frank Blau said, if you can't chart this happens, then this happens, then this happens on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
A piece of software just makes that exact process easier.
Easier, more automatic. And again, things that we couldn't do, like recording calls. And we had, I think, this conversation the last time is, your customer service reps are right under the marketing manager, and people are always befuddled as to why it's that way on the org chart. And the reason is marketing manager gets the right amount of calls from the right customer at the right time, fills up a bathtub, and lousy CSRs is a wide open drain to your bathtub. And
Right.
so the software and training, but like my manuals to that point, it's not what's in, you know, they have a couple of what I would call, if you're up on a high wire, it's nice to have a safety net. And so that's kind of what they do. I believe in proactive rather than I fell off the thing. I need a software. Now you can have both. It's great, but your CSRs have to be super trained really well. And that's what manuals are about.
Well, that's a fantastic answer, as have they all been. So the last question I had was about you, which is 7powercontractor.com is the website. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And
I didn't know that was a question. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. I sound like I'm making really confident statements a lot, but usually they end with a question mark. So I get in trouble for that sometimes. I'm like super confident, but then I'm just like, right. It's definitely this way unless you know better. So 7powercontractor.com is the website. Where else can people find you, get a hold of you, and why should they reach out to you? Obviously, you have the ability to answer all these questions, but like, what's the two pains that people are feeling right now, where if they're feeling that, they know it's time to get a hold of Al?
You know, it's just a case of, I'll take the back part of it, which is, if you wake up and you're putting out the same fires that you thought you had out yesterday, you know, are going to break out tomorrow, because that was the life I lived. And I wasn't a small company. We were 70, 80 people at this point. So it's not a people thing. The next person you hire is not going to fix that. So if you're always fighting the same fires, that's the problem. If, you know, you work really hard and there's no money at the end of the day, and profitability is because you're running back on callbacks, never get to new work, that's a problem. If, you know, you have to work, you know, really long hours, just clean up messes over and over again, and you're acting like it's the first day you've been in business, and you've been in business for 10, 20, 30 years, that's the problem. So those are the things that we talk about. The book that's available on Amazon, you know, that really does help, whether it's the book, it's the ebook, the Audible. It really helps you understand that there are not 7 million things to do. There's really 7. Now that'll keep you busy from the day you put the key in and you end, you say, you know what, I've had enough and I'm done. But it really is what fixes. These are the foundational pillars that you build that support everything else. I've only worked with 2 companies. One's where they run out of time and money. They've worked as hard as it is. There's no more hours. And so they have to begin to put these systems in to break through. Or you're great at marketing and you've done everything Nathan said. You got more calls than you can do. Problem is, you don't have any people that are any good, and everybody's figuring it out by the seat of their pants every day. You need the manuals and systems. And that's the program that's available there. It's 7powercontractor.com/SOMS. That's Sam, Oscar, Mary, Sam, AL, my name, Apple Louis. So anyway, that's, I'm sure you put it in your notes, but that's really a good place to see all of the things, all of the manuals, the org chart, all of these other things that you need to do. If you've got a question, there's a way to chat right there. You can just hit chat and go, hey, I've got a question or I want to know more about the programs. Just do that. We'll set up a phone call and be happy to address anything that you got on your mind, because really, I have sat in your chair and I know how miserable that can be. And so I don't really want to see people suffer. I can't, you know, not like I can't be everywhere anymore. That's why I moved these products online. And the most important of the 7 powers is operating power. You may love what I'm talking about in staffing, and I hope you do, but you really can't do staffing until you have operating manuals. Your sales are compromised if you don't have operating manuals. Sounds weird, but it's true. And so there's a lot of reasons that that foundational piece was the first one that I put in there, that program. And even again, if you go to the website, you'll see under products, it's really easy. Click on that tab and you'll get to see everything that you need to look at.
Awesome. Well, Al, it's been fantastic to have you back, Al Levy. To have you back on the show. I'm going to keep hammering home that I know that I've got that.
Thank you, Nathan Young.
Yeah. Doesn't get much better than this. And I know again that you've mentioned like you had never even heard of Traction or Gino Wickman. I subscribe so highly to them, consider myself an integrator in the EOS or traction system. And when I read 7-Power Contractor, if you're a person who subscribes to the Gino Wickman or the traction ideology, then know that no one holds that in higher regard than I do. 7-Power Contractor is basically the same thing, same principles, but specifically for your contracting company. You heard it here from an ops guy. That's how I feel about it. Thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that's a wrap.